This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
I want a full scan of the route. Holo footage?
Camps and sensors were destroyed.
Should I ready a team, we can eliminate him with ease.
Not yet. I prefer to keep my presence a shadow for now.
I talked to Mom. She wants me to come visit. Said she'd just...
Right, just wait until I can go with you.
I heard the stories. I know what you are, so stop pretending like you care.
You're operating under the premise that I am somehow the villain here, but it is not as simple as good and evil.
This is James Arnold Taylor, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi. I have a good feeling about this.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, your family-friendly, spoiler-free Star Wars podcast, where intelligent conversation and a splash of humor bring fans together from across the galaxy. I'm your host, Dan Zare, educator and Star Wars author. Whether you're a lifelong Jedi Master or just hopped off your first Star Cruiser, grab your cap and join us as we explore the mythology, philosophy, and wonder of a galaxy far, far away, one conversation at a time. Coffee with Kenobi is more than a podcast. It's a community. Together we celebrate the people, stories, and experiences that make Star Wars so special, creating a space where fans can come together and share their voices. Thank you to the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi, MEI Travel and Mouse Fan Travel. Check out coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel for a no-cost, no-obligation quote, and let them know Coffee with Kenobi and Dan Zare sent you. We've got a fabulous show for you today. We are talking about the first two episodes of Season 1 of Maul Shadow Lord, and I've got the great David Motters to join us and break down the psychology and literary aspects of this exciting new Star Wars animated series on Disney+. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite mug, and let's have coffee with Kenobi. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, we had a bit of a dry spell, and we were waiting for new Star Wars, for any news about a new Star Wars. Return of the Jedi had long been gone. We had the Timothy Zahn novels, and it was great. And then finally, there was an announcement of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And featured prominently in that initial trailer, which I remember seeing on Entertainment Weekly. No, I'm sorry, on Entertainment Tonight. I recorded it. Mary Hart introduced it. There it was. We recorded it on our VCRs, watched it over and over again. But there was one character, and everyone thought, this must be the new Darth Vader. He was red. He had a lot of spikes. He looked like a devil. It was Darth Maul, of course. Darth Maul was a big deal. He's such a big deal that we're talking about him many decades later. Yes, I am excited to talk with all of you about Star Wars Maul Shadow Lord. The first two episodes dropped, and I brought in, you think Darth Maul's a heavy hitter. What do you see the guest I've got joining us on Coffee with Kenobi today? He is, of course, from Star Wars Reactions, Dr. David Motters. David, welcome back. It is so good to see you.
Oh my gosh, it's good to see you. I told you earlier today and tonight when we got on, I missed talking to you, so I was so excited to get on and just talk to you. I'll talk to you about anything, but then to get to talk to you about Star Wars and new Star Wars and Maul, oh my gosh, this is Star Wars heaven.
It's pretty exciting, and I'm very honored to have you back on the show. It's good to be back. It's good to be back talking about Star Wars, being able to talk with our Coffee with Kenobi family, and Maul's the guy to do it. Now, before we talk about the individual episodes of Shadow Lord, so far the two episodes that have dropped for Star Wars Maul Shadow Lord are Chapter 1, The Dark Revenge, and Chapter 2, Sinister Schemes. Now, in the interest of full transparency, I am one of the members of the Star Wars media that were able to receive this series in advance. I've seen the first 8 episodes of the 10. And I won't spoil, of course, anything, I will cultivate my conversation to such a degree that we're only going to focus on episodes 1 and 2. So if you're worried about spoilers, you are in a safe place here at Coffee with Kenobi, which has always been one of the mantras of the show. So, David, where was your excitement level for Maul? What do you think about him as a character? Did you think this series was needed?
Well, it's interesting. Earlier, I thought about a question that you ask pretty consistently over the years, which is this a story that needs to be told?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think I can make an argument on both sides. I think that sometimes, less is more. I think with Boba Fett, the intrigue that we had about him was one of those instances. I didn't mind the Book of Boba Fett, but I loved the mystery behind him. With this one, I want to know more about Maul. I love this character, and I love Sam Witwer as he voices him, and just thinking about where this is on the timeline. And even though we do know where it ends in Twin Suns, right?
Right.
No spoilers there. That's been out for years. I do have my word, but I am fascinated to see, where this goes, and my excitement level was quite high, particularly for this character. Like you said it, the double-bladed red lightsaber, sign me up.
Right. Yeah, he was such an enthralling character. There was a lot of consternation even today. I will still hear students or people say that Maul wasn't in Phantom Menace enough, and to me, he was in Perfect. Because he's probably got more screen time than the shark in Jaws. I don't have that timed out, but it's the same idea. It's this big, exciting, frightening, looming threat, and less is more in this instance. So he's got a huge history. Now, was I excited about the series? I appreciate that you brought up the whole idea, and yes, it's very important to me. Is a story that needs to be told? So I sort of I can make arguments on both sides as you. For those who aren't fully aware, and most likely people listening to the show are aware, but just in case, this takes place after the Siege of Mandalore at the end of the Clone Wars. Maul has escaped the brand new Empire, the clones that tried to kill him. At the time of this, it's after all of that, so he started, his underground. He united the Pikes. He united several other members of the criminal organizations in the galaxy into the Shadow Collective, and things eventually fell apart. He helped with Death Watch. He took over Mandalore. He killed Duchess Satine. He's had many confrontations with Obi-Wan, and then he lost his brother Savage Opress to Darth Sidious, and then in the comics, which were in Dark Horse comics, those were canonical too. They were episodes of the Clone Wars that weren't made. He teams up with Count Dooku, and then Count Dooku betrays him. Shock, surprise, awe, not really. And then Grievous ends up killing Mother Talzin, who is the biological mother of Maul. So he's had quite a run. He has every reason to dislike his state in the galaxy. We know he does not like Obi-Wan Kenobi. We know that he does not like Darth Sidious and also fears Darth Sidious. So now we find him on this brand new planet, the planet Janix, Janix, and he has kind of got his underground situation going on, trying to, do we know yet what he's trying to do? We're going to talk about it. Let's try to take them in order. Luke Chapter 1, The Dark Revenge. This is a 31-minute episode. It sets the stage for everything. David, give us one word to describe your impressions of The Dark Revenge and overall thoughts on the episode.
Yeah, my word is intriguing, and that's for probably several reasons. One is I love this whole film noir feel. I love it. I am unabashedly, I just love that feel, that whole tone. So that fits perfectly with that. I'm also intrigued because I was looking at CWK Cafe, and you had made a statement that you kind of, you kept it, again, spoiler free, but you intrigued me by saying that, I believe, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is going to be a bigger story. And you left it at that, and I thought that was perfect, and that intrigues me. So when you give a review like that, I'm like, ooh. So, that's good stuff, right? And so that's why it's intriguing to me. It's also because you had mentioned it. Maul calls out Sidious a couple of times to Rook cast. And so I am intrigued with what he'll do, particularly, like you said, because of the fear he has of him, and because of what happened in season 5 when Sidious comes to Mandalore and really, defeats Maul, kills Savage Opress, and takes Maul captive, like you said. And then I'm actually looking at that collected comic that tells that story right after. Yeah, yeah. And so I'm absolutely intrigued. I this first episode, oh my gosh, ending it with Maul staring at Devon in the cell. That is just terrifying. And to hear her say Maul and it just end there is just chef's kiss. So
Yeah.
The action, I know a lot of people are talking about the animation. Joel, Aaron, and the whole crew there are just incredible. I heard Athena Portillo talking about new rigging for the figures or the characters, and it's incredible. So I just have so many superlatives, but I'll leave it at that. That I am absolutely intrigued for all those reasons. How about you?
So my word is, and I always feel like I can get away with hyphenating words because Corey's not here to tell me. My word is slow burn. This first episode, with full transparency, I don't know how I felt about the first episode. I felt like it was really plotting, which I applaud. I thought it has some moments, but Maul is somewhat restrained. I mean, we do get to see a little bit, but none of these characters that Maul fights are a challenge in any way, shape, form. And not many people are a challenge for Maul, to be honest. But I felt the direction, and I think you saw this in the second episode, and I did say this already in my spoiler-free review on social media, that this is the closest animation-wise to Andor, as far as it not being necessarily episodic, but a very slow, plotting, extremely long story. It's more like a book in animated form where each chapter, and I like this called chapters, really is like a chapter in a book because there's one thread. It's not like we have individual threads and episodic things like in the Bad Batch or the Clone Wars or even Rebels to a degree. This is a very, very different thing. And I was at first not sure about it because I wasn't expecting that style, but I was also grateful that they had something a little bit different, because I think Star Wars is at its best when we stick to the formula, we keep the ingredients because we like our meal. But I think sometimes adding different spices and different presentations help. And I think those things are present in this episode.
Well, to piggyback off what you're saying, when I was talking to Aaron tonight, my co-host on Star Wars Reactions, we talked about how we, talk about hyphenated. We kind of said it's Andor with the Force.
Yeah.
Right. Andor, we don't, right. Because you got Maul and you got Devon, of course, Master. I'm going to brutalize that name. Diodaki, I believe I'm saying it properly. I could be saying it wrong.
I refer to him as Daki.
Daki. Okay, Master Daki.
And that's how they refer to him quite a bit in the episode.
Okay. And so, where was I going with this? But no, there's force in it. There's force versus Andor. It's really out at the periphery and really not mentioned much. And so in this, I like that combination. And so, with season 2, I remember seeing the video of Sam, I don't know if it dropped Monday, April 6th. Like, I think
Yeah,
it
it
was a
did.
video of him, right? Of him saying they've already confirmed season 2.
Yes,
I'm all for it, man. And so, like
correct.
you said, in terms of a book and chapters, I can really see this playing out in a really, really cool way.
For sure. So in this particular episode, we meet Maul. They rob a bank owned by a crime lord whose name is Nico Demas. Demas is someone that has a history with Maul as far as them working together, in the underworld, in the seedy underbellies of the galaxy. We meet Captain Brander Lawson and his droid partner, who is Two Boots. They do some investigating, and this to me is the noir aspect that you talked about, which I think is really appealing because again, it's a bit of a different take on a genre, but you throw the Star Wars spices into the mix, and it creates for an interesting thing. What are your first impressions of Lawson and Two Boots, just from this episode alone?
Oh, you can already tell that they have a long history,
Mm-hmm.
and they play off each other. I think it's in this one, isn't it, where they go to have calf, and
There's a lot of
Lawson's there.
calf, and
There's
yeah,
a lot of calf in this thing, right? And so I think Brander asked him how he's doing. He goes, "Well, I can't enjoy this calf, but I just enjoy spending time with you."
yeah,
And and that really clues me into their relationship, and I think they play off each other so well. You get, with this Two Boots character, I'm really digging the character because there's a little bit of C3PO and following protocol and following the rules,
mm-hmm.
but also not the fear of C3PO. So
Right.
yeah, to see him team up with Brander's really cool. And I don't know if you grabbed the first 2 comics. I'm looking at them here to my left. They really kind of help develop that, Dan. It's a prelude, like on the cover of
Right.
the comic, prelude to the upcoming show on Disney Plus. So I'm looking at it here, and they do a nice job of showing their relationship really in the very first comic. I'm not going to spoil anything. I encourage people to get it and
Sure.
enjoy it. But you can see it, Dan, go right from the comic into this first episode, and
Which is
so
awesome.
it's so cool and so well done. But yeah, I like these 2 characters a lot.
Lawson is interesting because he's a lawman, and we really haven't seen a lawman. I mean, in the Star Wars universe, at least in animation, of course, you've got the lawman who had Boba Fett's armor,
Right.
Cobb Vanth, in
Yep.
the Mandalorian Book of Boba Fett, but he is certainly not the prototypical. This Lawson is really much more of a classic gumshoe. He's even got the great mustache, and I hope we see a lot of wonderful cosplay of Lawson because he's a pretty cool character. What we've seen so far, and his dynamic is to trust his guts. And there's clearly a problem. There's a wonderful moment where there's a hologram of who the thief is, who's in charge, and it's Maul, a close up of Maul. And Two Boots right away wants to report this crime or this person to the Empire. And again, this is pretty early on in the Empire's reign of terror on the galaxy, their stranglehold on the galaxy. And Lawson, you can already tell we as an audience can root for him because he does not want to report anything to the Empire, because even though he doesn't have the perspective we do, most likely with his connections and his relationship to the criminals, as far as arresting them, putting them in prison, so to speak, the Empire's not the answer because they're just going to come in and take over, right? And I think right away, because these two have a clear respect for one another, the fact that they have a very different philosophy of handle. This one is very by the book. I don't think outside the box. This is what the protocols say. This is what we must do. Lawson goes by his instincts, and I think it creates a nice dynamic.
Absolutely. And I think the chief there, Chief Kleiss, I think
Yes.
she's really vibing with Brander Lawson as well. She's taken a similar tack. She does not want the Empire there either. Clearly, Janix and the people of Janix know what happens when the Empire shows up. So yeah, it does play a very neat interplay. I know StarWars.com gives some nice background on Brander, and you see the picture of him and his wife and his kid right on his
Right.
desk, and apparently they're separated. And of course, you see the tension when he goes home to see his son there for a little bit. But yeah, this will be interesting to see how this. I guess I struggle with, he's not killed by Maul. Maul goes through him, just doesn't even have to use his lightsaber, just
No.
charges him, knocks him over, knocks him out. But Maul leaves him alive. And so that's intriguing to me. That's intriguing. That's another part of my word. And what's going on there? Why do that? Because he's just going. You said it earlier. He's going through all these droids, and anybody would like a hot knife through butter. But yeah. So it'll be an interesting play between them. But it's funny, Dan. I read the comics, both issues here tonight, just to kind of prep. And then I'm watching the 2 episodes tonight, and I look, and I'm like, he really does have boots on. And the other droids don't.
Yes.
I didn't realize. I'd read the comic and I didn't even see it. And then I look and I'm like, they're drawn exactly the same way as in the animated show. And I'm like, oh my gosh, all the other droids like him don't have boots on.
Right.
So there you go. Yeah.
I like that. Well, okay. So another key aspect of this first episode, we meet 2 Jedi in hiding, right? We've got Devin Azara, who is appears to be the Padawan of Daki, and they're in the streets, and they have another conversation. 2 partners, similar a juxtaposition between 2 Boots and Lawson, where they have different philosophies, but this time it's involving something as critical and basic as I'm hungry, I don't have any money, I've got to get some food. So talk about the difference between the 2 of them and sort of how they handle that.
Well, this is where this is a big thing that Aaron and I talked about, and that I do a psychology corner
That's right.
on our podcast, and this is going to be a reoccurring theme, and I'm sure for the next 4 weeks, right? We've got 10 episodes, 2 per week, so got a week down, 4 more weeks to go. I think this is just going to be, this is low hanging fruit for me, man. I love it.
Sure.
It's in a good way, right? It's the morality issues. It's what is right and wrong, and how do you go about doing this, and that's going to play into my descriptor word for the second episode. But I find it fascinating to see the master's view versus her view, and what is right and wrong. Is it okay to steal if you're hungry and have no money? It's not your stuff, right? It's not your food, and
she's not stealing diamonds or a speeder. She wants a few small pieces of fruit.
Right.
So then it becomes here's the gray. The Jedi aren't gray. There are no gray Jedi. That's not canonical. But there's this whole idea of master, and he says, well, we're just going to beg.
Yeah.
And they show right away. They show him begging, and it is not immediately successful.
Yeah.
And it creates for an interesting dynamic. But she clearly respects him. But she also has a hungry stomach.
Yeah. 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 No, it's this is going to be fascinating, and this does continue into the second episode with what Maul says to her and stuff like that. So
right, which we'll definitely get to.
Yeah.
So the only other key thing about this is that Vario is arrested. Vario is talk about Vario.
Yeah, Vario, this fascinating guy, in this exoskeleton, right? And
you're right.
He it's interesting, like you said, he's arrested, he's in the cell across from Devin, and so she can watch this whole thing go down. And it is a fascinating conversation between Maul and him, and he only survives because he's able to help progress Maul's a process of cleaning house, right? As the crime
Right.
boss that comes back, yeah, and so he says, "Hey, I can help you get to the Pikes," and that's the only reason he lives. And but what I think, Dan, is at least in these first couple episodes, and this one in particular, he's the comic relief for the seriousness
Right.
that we're seeing. You got to have it. You have to have it. So
He's a diminutive alien creature who wears that massive exoskeleton, almost like Iron Man style, to make him bigger. But he actually ends up killing Demas, who Maul was after. So even with all the comedic relief and his like very fun, entertaining, cartoonish voice, he's also a killer. He's also a criminal, but he is spared because Maul needs him, because his goal is to take out the Pike Syndicate leader, who is Marge Krim.
Yeah,
and Marge Krim is was featured in the Clone Wars episodes of the last season where Ahsoka met the twins and she was imprisoned amongst all the Pikes. And Mark Krim is who talks with Maul via hologram in that one episode where Maul appears very, very briefly. At the end, the ending is sort of a cliffhanger ending. Anything you want to say about the ending or anything else about the episode before we rate it?
Well, you mean, yeah, as the door opens and Maul walks in and you can just see the shadow of his head and horns. I think it's a perfect, that's why I said to you, chef's kiss to end that first episode, and for her to say it. I mean, she's clearly heard about him from other Jedi,
And she's imprisoned at the end, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so after Maul turns around, and it's so awesome how they animate it, and they have him turn around, squint his eyes, comes over, door opens, and then they just have the point of view, like I said, of her, and ends there, and
Clipped
literally,
beautifully.
it's his shadow on her, literally. So
It
beautifully done.
well, the whole thing is cinematic. Craig Dickinson, a longtime friend of the show, he posted in the CWK Cafe, which is, of course, is our Facebook group where people can talk about this and all other things Star Wars related. Family friendly, spoiler free. It's a good place to be if you want to talk Star Wars. But he talked about the cinematography, which is something he talks about on Reading Between the Reels all the time in his podcast as well. And I think it's really the lighting that you mentioned here at the end of this really stands out. I think the episode sets the stage. I want to move on to the second episode, but let's give a review, a letter grade for this episode. Again, The Dark Revenge, and then any last minute thoughts on it. So why don't you go ahead, David?
Yeah. Just in terms of last minute thoughts, I think, like you said, a first episode has to set the stage. There's a lot of heavy lifting to do, and I thought it did a wonderful job. I do wonder, you and I are hardcore, and you and I know where this takes place. We followed Maul for a long time. I do wonder, Sam Witwer did say that people will be fine, and they do drop a lot of hints to really kind of clue you in on what's going on and the players involved, even the Shadow Collective. But I do wonder if some of the less hardcore will kind of know what's going on, but that's okay. They'll get there. But I would, letter grade wise, I've been going back and forth. I think it sets it up nicely. I'd say probably a B plus, maybe A minus, in that range. We've talked many times and done many letter grades, and I can't imagine that the latter episodes aren't better. In fact, when they did that presser recently, I know you've done a lot of those with the podcast. They were interviewing Athena Patillo, Matt Miknovitz, and Brad Rao.
Yep.
And so you could see all three of them, right, asking some of the podcasters what their favorite episodes were. And they, listed off ones. But Mac, I think, was it Brad Rao said his, I don't know, maybe it's the 10th one. He said, just wait for it, he said. So again, intriguing, right? Intriguing. So how can that not be better? I can't imagine it's not, and we'll really set up season 2. So probably B plus.
Okay.
How about you? Yeah.
So for this first episode, I'm going to give it a C minus.
Okay.
I was going to watch them all. I mean, I wanted to. It's a fun aspect of doing a podcast. I was I was also going to be on that round table that you talked about, but that was when I was on vacation. So the sands of Tatooine were not in my future, just the sands of the beach in Florida were there. But it was still fun to hear those conversations that you talked about. And there's so many more questions you could ask, but I'm giving this a C- because even for me, and I know this lore like you very well. Especially Maul, I know him backwards and forwards because I wrote a lot about him for different projects and for the Build Your Own Darth Vader, Build Your Own Kit with the encyclopedia that goes with that I've been fortunate to write 99% of. I've had to do a lot of deep dive with Maul. So I've really had to plot out where he is in every aspect. And I say all of that to point out that even with this, I was a little confused. And I'm sure there are plenty of people who know this lore better than I do, and I think that's awesome. But if I was lost on it, I would imagine people are too. I think the context is important. I think try as you might at this first episode, it's not fully there. Even if you haven't seen Clone Wars and that, and if your only knowledge of this is Phantom Menace and maybe a little bit of Rebels, you're like, wait, how is he here? I thought he died. I thought he died twice. How is he in this? So I can see where that could be challenging for people. That being said, at the time of this recording, I think on Rotten Tomatoes, it was ranked 100%. So you really, I'm no math major, but that seems pretty good. And I think if it was just this episode, I don't know how hooked I would be to continue the series. However, that changes. So, and we're well, as you stick with us each week, you're going to see why, and I'm going to happily eat my words. And believe me, I've got the ketchup ready. I can't wait to eat my words on that. You'll see. And I always feel it's always tricky to say that, but as I've said many times, when you're going to be a critic of something or analytical about something, I think that your no makes your yes have way more weight. Right. And so there's that.
Absolutely. No, you've always said that. And no, I think it is. I always wonder for you, like it's that hard. Maybe it's not yet because you're probably used to it now. Is that traversing that whole thing of knowing the first 8 episodes but really truly grading this thing for what it is. And
I will say, well, thank you. That's very kind of you. And I will say for this season, it's probably the hardest I've ever had to do it.
Oh,
it really is.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah. And that's even like when some of the movies. So that's cool. Let's talk about Chapter 2, Sinister Schemes. We learn a little bit more about Lawson and kind of where he is at. So give me one word to describe the episode, Sinister Schemes, and overall reactions to it.
Well, you said it earlier. Corey's not here, so we can get away with hyphenated words.
That's right.
I seem to know. I noticed that you'll even do him when he is there.
I like to poke the bear a little bit.
Poke it a little bit. Moral ambiguity.
Beautiful.
Moral ambiguity.
That's I think that's hyphenated. I looked at it in my dictionary over here that is invisible, and it looks like that's right.
That's right. Dan's fact checking it. Yeah, I mean that. We hinted at it as you and I were just covering the first episode, but it's so cool to see this progress from the conversation. Like you said, we talked a bit about the conversation between Devin and Master Daki, and as it progresses to Maul and Devin, and Sam Witwer, the way he does Maul here, it is delicious. And so the moral play, the moral ambiguity, and the way he discusses things, I think is just outstanding. In fact, the thing for me, there's a line, because a lot of times you'll say, well, what stuck out this episode? It's kind of towards the end, right, Dan? She's in that tube and she's quote unquote a prisoner. He's saying she's not, but he says you need to see the galaxy for what it truly is. And then he even says to her, it's much more complicated than just good and evil. And I I love that because look, we could talk for the next 5 to 6 hours just on that statement alone. And that's why I said to you, and like I said, I have no knowledge of future episodes, but I know that, I very much plan on discussing the moral ambiguity and just the moral issues,
Sure.
in each episode. So that I found very fascinating, and I'm curious to see where Maul takes that. He loves doing that. He did a lot of that. I've been watching a lot of the previous Rebels episodes between
Yeah.
Maul and Ezra, right? So, and him trying to work him over. So, particularly in Twilight of the Apprentice, both those episodes. So, moral ambiguity. And I like this episode more than the first even. So my grade will reflect that.
My word is gumshoe.
Ah.
This is where the noir classic, the gumshoe's trying to solve the crime or the mystery or catch the assailant, the bad guy. All Lawson is missing is a hat and a trench coat, right? It's like noir in space, and it's pretty awesome. Like this one got more into a zone for me where I thought, okay, I'm going to really get into this. And as I said, I was a little worried after the first one that it wasn't going to quite scratch that itch, but it did in very unexpected ways. It's more the interplay with the droid. And then a very key aspect of this, which we're going to talk about, is his relationship with his son. The fact that this man is not just a detective, one-dimensional, mustache-wielding detective, but a father with multiple responsibilities and duties, which you and I can relate to, except for the crime part, fortunately. So that's actually where I want to take it. I want to start with this juxtaposition of his challenge, right? He's got his son, and his son is an athlete. His son is clearly misses his father, but his dad is constantly pulled away. Even when he is able to like talk with his son, it's kind of like the "I'm laying down the law" kind of thing. I'm sorry, I can't help you. He keeps getting called away. Sorry, it's a long day at work, son. But then he gets a communique, and he has to leave. And his son, they don't butt heads per se, but you can tell that there's a lot of disappointment in hurt there, especially because, as we learn, the mother is not in the picture for whatever reason. We don't know at this point what the reason actually is, but it tugs at your heartstrings. It makes Lawson more interesting, and sadly, it continues the recent tradition in Star Wars of the absentee father, really started by certainly Anakin, but more prevalently by Han Solo, which I always hated that dynamic of Solo. But yeah, there's the absentee father thing here, but this is because he's so busy with his job, and it looks like he's also maybe trying to hide from something too. I mean, you're literally an expert in this. I'm not. I'm just a literature guy.
No, it's so good, and I've always enjoyed it when, whether I'm on or not, and you bring up that issue of that running theme through Star Wars, and again, when it comes to that moral ambiguity, my one word for this episode, it's a big thing. And when I look to moms and dads, it's huge, in terms of learning the world. How do you deal with stressors? And I've said it to you privately, when you've been down here at Disney World, and we've done things and so on, and I've said it on our podcast a lot, which is, if I talked to thousands of young males over the years I've done this 34 years now as a clinical psychologist.
Wow.
And yeah, buddy, and I'm still going strong, trying to. But I would always tell these young males, I say, listen, if you don't want to get married, don't get married. But if you want to get married to somebody, and if you want to have children with her, here's one of the biggest issues you're going to have to deal with. And you laid it out, Dan. Can you balance being at work, because work wants you there, but can you also be at home because your wife and children want you there too? And it's a tension, right? That's one of the major tensions for us men in our lives. If you want to get married and have children, and so on Coffee with Kenobi, you've always said family first. On Star Wars Reactions, we say that, and we as dads try to model the opposite of what a lot of Star Wars dads have modeled. So,
Right.
yeah, and we do. You do it. I know you do it, and Tom and all of us, we're trying our best. And so, I'm hopeful that he will. It'll be nice to see if this can where he can come around and be a better dad. But I do like this play with his son Riley and this kind of the tension there. But I guess in a galaxy far, far away, they're dealing with the tension as well. Can you be at work and be at home?
Right. And I think it makes Lawson infinitely more interesting than if he's just trying to catch a villain. There's I think there has to be a humanity aspect to the character. Otherwise, you're not going to buy in. Luke is interesting because it's not like I like the Empire. Just can't get involved, right? I've got work to do, and it's such a long way from here. He has all these excuses, but in that moment, it's the teenager who's conflicted and afraid to leave. He feels a sense of responsibility. He's a human being. The backdrop is the sand and the space. And here, this is a human being who's trying to keep his planet, his city safe. He wants to keep the Empire away. And then, you mentioned his superior, whose name is, where's her name?
Oh, Kleiss, Chief Kleiss.
Yeah, Chief Kleiss, they want him to wrap this up quickly, right? You got to wrap this up quickly. The Governor Janix also wants this to be resolved quickly. We got to have peace here. And then eventually we find out that he, as I said earlier, he has his criminal contacts. Her name is Rena Sewell. Clearly there's some sort of romantic flirtation or something going on with them, or was going on, or who really knows at this point. But she wants to help him out. Daki, in the meantime, who was lost his apprentice, we don't know if we mentioned before, but she was arrested for the shoplifting. We talked about their discussion, but not that she was actually arrested. And so Daki is following, and is this the episode where, well, actually, I don't want to say. I'm not going to say. I don't want to ruin anything. But basically, Vario lets Maul know eventually through various situations where the Pike transport is. And then Maul, who's really not a main character necessarily in this episode. I mean, he's there, but I think we're more drawn towards Lawson. Would you say that's fair to say?
In this one, definitely, I agree.
Yeah. And so Maul does get a chance to really show. He does a great little switcheroo with attacking the Pikes, which I thought was really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Well. Yeah.
That reminded me of Rogue One when Vader shows up on the Tantive.
Tantive,
how do we say it? Tantive, I know.
Tantive, yeah.
Han Han, right? So I know, to see him come down that hallway was just brilliant.
You really notice the lightsaber too. I think the art, the animation, and the lightsaber, the way it kind of ripples, but just kind of cascades along itself. The energy, pretty neat, pretty vibrant,
beautiful, gorgeous.
Yeah. But we probably, especially since I have you on, we probably need to talk about Maul's conversations with Devin, because Devin initially was arrested, but then she is out of the prison, or not the prison, but the holding cells. But then she ends up getting taken by Maul, and there's some interesting conversations there, kind of reverse Silence of the Lambs kind of stuff. But what do you want to say about how Maul manipulates her in their confrontation with each other?
Well, it's always fascinating to see him. Like I said, I went back and was watching some of the episodes in the way that Maul talks to Ezra, particularly in Twilight of the Apprentice, those 2 episodes. And here, he starts off with saying, "You've been indoctrinated, you've been lied to by the Jedi," right? and then goes into, can you see the galaxy for what it really is? And then he
Yep.
says, this isn't as simple as good and evil. And that always brings me back to the question that I've asked people for over 30 years. I've said it in my psychology corner multiple times over the years on our podcast. And the question is there ultimate truth, meaning is there right and wrong, good and evil, or is there moral relativism? Maul is making an argument. There's moral relativism, and it's even interesting to hear some of the interviews that Sam Witwer has done. He talks about the gradations. Like if Palpatine is a 10, that's how bad he is, and Vader's like an 8.5, 9.5. I'm probably at an 8 with Maul. You don't. He says you don't want to go to coffee with this guy. You don't want to have him fix your car, and so on. But Sam says a lot of this series is bad people dealing with even worse people, right? And so again, these ideas of gray, and I like what you said earlier in the episode here about gray Jedi. No, is there right and wrong? And I think Dockie's really trying to convey that. And what I thought about going back to that conversation, Dan, and even what Maul is saying is, and this as a teacher, I think about you and as a teacher for so many years. When you look at your kids, and my dad taught high school for 32 years, and we talked about how it's not if your teacher's looking at you or your parents. How do you act when nobody's watching? How do you act? The integrity, right? And do you know what's right and wrong? And do you do the right thing even when people aren't watching? So these are all the things that gets going. And I think, George wanted us to think about all these things.
For sure.
And right. And you can see Filoni and Matt Miknovitz and the creators here, Brad Rao and Athena Portillo, very much want to continue that tradition of getting us to think and discuss these issues.
Right. And they're very prevalent. Maul is, and that's the thing people used to always love to say, well, the Sith are always telling the truth. Well, yes and no. There's a lot they kind of keep, sort of underneath, like in a lot of red herring situations. Look over here. This is the truth I want you to focus on, not the whole thing. But he works with Devin the first time, especially and she says, you say I'm not a prisoner, but clearly I am. He's like, no, you can go whenever, but he doesn't unlock the door. He asks her to reconsider the Jedi are the guardians of peace and justice, but all I see is lawlessness. And she's like, I believe in those principles still. But he pokes at it. He's like, well, if there were more people like you, maybe the galaxy wouldn't be in this dire situation that it's actually in, giving her faux agency. Maybe you're the one who should lead us. Maybe you should take over. I mean, it doesn't say that. But we know that when those seminars show up at the bad guy conferences, he's first in line to those. You got to get the free merch. So it's that's interesting because I think Star Wars, when it plays into the psychology, and they do it really well with Jedi and the Sith, I think. I'm thinking about the idea of Maul being what did Whitwer say is an 8.5?
Yeah, Sam said 8.5. He even said it here at MegaCon back in March. He was here.
Sure.
And he talked about the series, and he's repeated that the 8.5. Yep.
Yeah, I'd go 8.75, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's very interesting. So I was interested in hearing like the way he does the manipulative stuff. I mean, Devin's no fool. You can tell that I wouldn't say she's intrigued, but she's listening. Because there's always, when you're powerful, you've got all these abilities. With great power comes great responsibility. Thank you, Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. There's something there, and he wants to see where she's at.
Right. Well, and to piggyback on this, a good friend of mine here is been in the Marion County Sheriff's Office for years. He's a sheriff deputy.
Sure.
We sat down one night and we were watching some of the last interviews of Ted Bundy, and he was looking at it from a law enforcement perspective. I was looking at it from a psychological perspective. But one of the things that you think about, and you were hitting on it, Dan, and like you said, how do you manipulate people? You'd mentioned the Sith, like Dooku telling the truth to Obi-Wan, but there's, like you said, there's a part of what happens too is we talk about, right, two different types of lying, and I've heard you mention this before. There's lying by commission, you tell a lie, and there's lying by omission, and that's kind of what you were hitting at. Like Maul will say stuff up here, and like you said, just down below, well, he doesn't talk about all that. That's lying by omission,
For sure.
right? And so that's a big part of it. And the other biggie, and you were hitting on it too, and I see this, and I've worked with families and family dynamics, and if you have an unhealthy mom, unhealthy dad, unhealthy brother or sister, and the hardest part to discern is when someone, and this doesn't have to be a family member, right, Dan? If someone's talking to you and me, and they give some truth but then false. Sometimes if there's just this false statement, you and I are like, oh, come on, that, it's just blatantly false. But when you have a mixture of truth and falsehood, that can be very difficult for us as humans to tease out and discern, particularly with people, like Ted Bundy's at the far extreme as a sociopath, just brilliant professional liar, mixes in truth. Sometimes you watch him speak for a while, Dan, it's all lies, but incredibly smooth, good looking, slick, that kind of stuff. And so that can be very hard for us. When people are just blatantly false, that's easier to pick up. But when there's truth involved, and Maul does that, like you said, that statement, when he said that, I'm like, oh my God, I love Matt Miknovitz for saying that. Well, if there's more of you, we wouldn't, the Jedi were like you, we wouldn't have all this stuff. And it's true, right?
Right. Maybe you can do something about it. And he clearly wants to weaponize her. I mean, he's pretty clear about that when he's talking with Rootcast. Shout out to Vanessa Marshall. And it's really compelling. At the end, she finally uses the Force, slides the compartmentalized mini cell, and escapes. And that's how the episode ends. So tell me any last minute thoughts on this, and let's hear a letter grade for Sinister Schemes.
Yeah. Well, maybe I guess, let me start off with the letter grade. I mentioned it'd be higher because I'm loving this morality play, this moral ambiguity, because it gets the conversations going that we do need to talk about every day. I put this up probably at an A minus, just above that B plus. I think it is an improvement here. I still, again, hearing the creatives say, just wait for 9 and 10, and you're like, oh my gosh, all right, let's go. And the reason why I rank it so high is, like I said, I love this interplay and the psychology involved. It's right up my alley, and I think a lot of times with you, when the literature is just so up your alley, but I feel like there's a lot of crossover there between literature and psychology, and it's a lot of fun. So for me, I'm in on this series, hook, line, and sinker with these kinds of topics.
Oh, that's great. Well, I gave The Dark Revenge a C minus. I'm going to give Sinister Schemes a B plus. So a dramatic improvement. I like, this is where the slow burn, you start to see that we're building to something. And this is more about, while there's some interesting fight sequences, they're very brief. This is really more about character dynamics. Lawson and his son, Lawson and the chief, what's going on with Devin and Maul. There's a lot of interplay there, and it creates for some interesting character moments. And I think that's the stuff I think people care more about. You can have the greatest special effects in the world, but you don't have good characters, then who cares? And we're starting to see that. And it makes for a lot of fun, a lot of promise. And this one ends on a nice little cliffhanger. But, we shall see.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
David, you know what? I think I needed this conversation more than you know. I've certainly missed doing this show, but talking about this with you has reignited my love of Star Wars. And honestly, when you it's the best part about the fandom is getting different perspectives from people who care and have just understand what makes a good story. And that's why I love the Coffee with Kenobi family so much, our audience. our everyone who listens to the show and supports the show over a decade. We all make each other think about Star Wars differently, and this is a great example of that. So thank you for being that for me.
Oh my gosh! Well, you do that. You've done that for years for me. You and Corey, Tom. Oh my gosh! You guys get my brain going, and like you said, let's be intellectually honest. Let's be critical thinkers. Star Wars allows us to do all that, and those are good habits to create. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of good habits, if you're not subscribing to Star Wars Reactions, this is a good habit you need to indoctrinate into your Star Wars buffet. David, tell us what's going on with the show and where they can subscribe, and find out more about you and Aaron.
Oh, definitely. We recorded tonight. We're gonna cover all the episodes each week. We've recorded less. I think we've kind of mirrored Coffee with Kenobi, just in terms of, there hasn't been as much content, right, since really, Andor a year ago right now, April, May last year,
yeah.
if you can believe it. But we're getting back. We're recording. We've been busy, just like you are, Dan, with your son and family, and so I'm busy with my wife and daughter, and her graduating this year, and I know Aaron's busy with a lot of stuff too, with his daughter getting married. So, but we're going to be covering it, and we're next month going to be down at Disney Springs with Jason Brame, who's been a contributor, to Coffee with Kenobi back in the day, and he's going to rent out a theater there, and we're going to go see Mandalorian and Grogu on May 21st there. And, we did that last time in 2019, the last time there was a Star Wars movie. So that's coming up. We're looking forward to doing that. And we've told people, if you're in the Disney Springs, in that area, or staying at Disney at that time, just come over and say hi to us. Aaron and I will have swag with us, and come say hi to us, and obviously Jason too. And, in terms of where to get a hold of us, I told Aaron, I said, you reel this off at the end of every episode. And I said, will you type it up? He typed it up. He emailed it to me so I don't mess these up. Because I'm like, I'll mess them up. I'll have a Carabas moment very quickly. But your Facebook is SW Reactions Pod. Instagram is SW Reactions, and TikTok. That's been really popular, Aaron said, for us. That's SW Reactions as well. And if you want to get a hold of Aaron or me, it's just, the best way is through the show socials.
And just like that, our journey through the galaxy for today has come to a close. Thanks for listening to and supporting Coffee with Kenobi, where fans can come together to think, learn, and discuss this galaxy we all love. Truly, I'm so grateful you chose to spend part of your day with me. Special thank you to our official travel partner, MEI Travel and Mouse Fan Travel. Looking to plan your next magical vacation to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, or even a Disney cruise? Want to explore Galaxy's Edge or attend Star Wars Celebration? Becky Mankin and her team will get you there with a no-cost, no-obligation quote, and the kind of peace of mind we all appreciate. Learn more at coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel. Thank you again to David Modest for joining me to talk about the first 2 episodes of Maul Shadow Lord. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with your fellow Star Wars friends. You can find us on social media or visit coffeewithkenobi.com for articles, merchandise, and more ways to connect. Until next time, I'm Dan Zaire, and this is the podcast you're looking for. For all things Star Wars, news, reviews, videos, and more, head to our home base, coffeewithkenobi.com. Don't forget to join the CWK Cafe on Facebook at coffeewithkenobi.com/community, our family-friendly, spoiler-free group for all your Star Wars thoughts, comments, and conversation. This podcast is possible thanks to the incredible support of the CWK Alliance. Want to help keep the show brewing? For as little as $1 a month, you can join the CWK Alliance and get access to CWK Pour-Over, our exclusive weekly audio and video podcast. Learn more at coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance. And know this, 10% of your monthly contributions goes directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital. Want to connect? You can email me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com. Follow me on X at Mr. Zaire, MRZEHR, Instagram, Threads, at DanZareCWK, and Blue Sky. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can follow Coffee with Kenobi across social media on X, Instagram, Threads, Pinterest, and Blue Sky, and give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi. And if you want to send an email to the show, you can email us feedback at coffeewithkenobi.com. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you'll find over 700 videos, including past live shows, events, and this podcast. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really helps more Star Wars fans find our little corner of the galaxy. Do you need a speaker for your next event? Visit danzymedia.com. I love to discuss mythology, leadership, storytelling, or create something tailored to your audience. And finally, grab your CWK gear at coffeewithkenobi.com/shop and show your support in style.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.